Welcome to the Human Capital Innovations Podcast, your go-to source for personal, professional, and organizational growth and development. We hope you tune in often for all things people management, organizational development and change, organizational leadership, and social impact related. Maximize your personal and organizational potential with Human Capital Innovations Podcast. Welcome to the Human Capital Innovations Podcast. In this HCI podcast episode, I talk with Josh Bersin about his new global study on building a truly healthy organization. Josh Bersin, welcome back to the Human Capital Innovations Podcast.
Thank you, Jonathan. It's great to be here again.
Yeah, it's great to have you back. I'm so excited to talk about this new report that's coming out on Monday, your new global study on building a truly healthy organization. So we'll be exploring that together today. But also we're going to talk about the New York Times story the other day about Amazon and some of the problems related there in terms of vulnerable workers and leave and just all sorts of challenges that they're facing at Amazon and what they need to be doing, to build a more truly healthy organization in line with what you found in your report. Right. As we get started, I'll just share Josh's bio with everybody. Josh Bersin founded Bersin and Associates in 2001 to provide research and advisory services focused on corporate learning. He expanded the company's coverage to encompass HR, talent management, talent acquisition, and leadership, and became a recognized expert in the talent market. Bersin sold the company to Deloitte in 2012 and was a partner in Bersin by Deloitte up until 2018. In 2019, Bersin founded the Josh Bersin Academy, a professional development academy, which has become the home for HR. In 2020, he put together a team of analysts and advisors who are now working with him to support and guide HR organizations from around the world. Recently published research covers topics such as business resilience in the pandemic, HR technology market trends, and diversity, equity, and inclusion. He is frequently featured in publications such as Forbes, the Harvard Business Review, HR Executive, the Wall Street Journal, and CLO Magazine. He is a popular blogger and has more than 800,000 followers on LinkedIn. Josh is definitely the guy to be in touch with when it comes to all things HR, talent management and acquisition, and HR tech. It's wonderful to have you back, Josh. Anything else you would like to share with listeners by way of your background before we dive on in?
No, that was plenty. We don't need to get it into me anymore.
Okay, well, great. You truly do have had just a tremendous career, and you continue to add so much value. So it's a pleasure to have you back on. Now, let's actually start with this Amazon story. The New York Times broke the story. Frame that up for us. What is the issue there, and what will Amazon need to be doing about this?
Okay, well, I'm not personally familiar with the stories that they reported, but I have to believe they're true. What it seems to indicate is that, and I've heard this from people who work at Amazon, is that this is not a company that is focused on the health, well-being, or long-term health of their employees. They've been focused on customers at the expense of everything else. Now, those of us that are all Amazon users have benefited from that. But I think they've essentially over-rotated towards market share growth, revenue growth, innovation, customers, and they're now realizing that that's not possible without taking care of the employees. Now, I've learned that through 25 years working as an analyst in HR, that the best companies and the most enduring companies, at some point in time, they have some sort of a crisis, and they realize that if we don't take care of our employees, we don't have a company anymore. And I think Amazon is coming to that conclusion slowly. I mean, I think when Jeff Bezos was promoted to chairman, he did make a funny comment, saying, maybe we should become the best employee company, as if he was just sort of thinking about it for the first time, which was very sort of entertaining for me. But, the fact that they have unions, that they have lawsuits, they haven't been paying their taxes. There's no excuse for this. And I did see some comments from some people saying, well, it's a big company, it's hard to manage. That's not true. They've done a really good job of getting, the box of diapers to your house within 1 minute of the time you're supposed to be there. And exactly, they can do HR too. They just chose not to do it. Stitching together HR technology is totally doable. They have Amazon Web Services, plenty of IT people. There's no excuse for not doing this well. So I think it's a little bit of an indictment of their investment in the people side of their business. And again, I have no direct relationship with Amazon execs, but I think there's going to be a bit of a wake-up call there. And more over the next couple of years, they're going to realize they have to take care of people. And in the long run, it'll make them a better company. So that's my high-level perspective.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. And I also don't have any direct connection with Amazon other than as a customer that enjoys their fast delivery. And, we do appreciate that, right? We appreciate the customer focus. It's a tremendous company that's innovated in so many ways, and they've added so much value, and that's wonderful. But I also agree with you that there's really no excuse. If they can do logistics the way they do logistics, if they can do all the technology the way they do it, certainly focusing on the HR tech, the people tech, and the experience of employees in the workplace is something within their range of what they can do.
Well, a good example, let me give you, Jonathan, an example that I think is an analogy to this. One of the company I've spent a lot of time with over the years is UPS. UPS is in a business, parts of UPS's business are very similar to Amazon. And UPS is a very old company. UPS originally was a horse and buggy company. And UPS is a very people-centric culture. And if you've ever met a UPS driver, with the brown shorts on or whatever they're wearing, I'll bet you found them to be a wonderful person who had a nice conversation with them. They have managed to build an incredibly successful company, taking very good care of their people. They're not perfect. Nobody's perfect. You don't have to be hard on people to get things to the customer on time. Also, I would challenge this idea that Amazon is the lowest cost provider. They're not. The price of Amazon products are no longer the lowest. In fact, they're higher now than direct consumers. So they have the money to do this. They can pay people fairly. They're very profitable. They've got incredibly good technology people. I think this is just a culture issue they've got to come to grips with, that they're in the people business, whether they like it or not.
Yeah, I agree. It's a bit of a mindset shift, a culture shift. The capabilities certainly are there, and they can do it. They just have to choose to do it. And so nothing like a nice New York Times article to get the attention of Bezos and the board.
But, I'm not even sure it matters. I don't think the New York Times article makes that much difference. I think it really becomes an issue when the customers themselves say, I don't want to buy from you guys anymore. I don't feel good about this. I don't like the experience I'm having. And that's starting to probably happen. I would imagine they're starting to get that kind of messaging.
Yeah, I think so. Wonderful. So that's a great example of really what you're talking about in this new report that's coming out on Monday. So why don't you give us a little bit of a teaser for that? Then maybe we can dive on into a few of the high level findings and recommendations that come from the research you've been doing.
Yeah, so the name of the report is The Healthy Organization, and where it came from was back around 2015 or 2016, or even before then, I started getting inquiries about well-being. And I was at Deloitte at the time, and I had written an article called The Overwhelmed Employee. And this was long before the pandemic, and we were suffering from, our mobile phones had too many messages, we had too many emails, too many meetings, and people were kind of, looking for ways to get more sleep. Arianna Huffington's book had just come out. And so there was this big wake-up call in corporate America around the world that, we need to have a well-being program at work. But the well-being program was really in the compensation and benefits department, and it was looked at as a recruiting tool to get people to come to the company. Oh, we have unlimited vacation here. We have yoga classes here. We have free food. We have, whatever. And then you come to work there, but you find out you have all that, but you also have to work 80 hours a week. And you also have a boss who's breathing down your neck every night. So, companies started piling on more and more of these well-being benefits. And then, of course, the pandemic hits. So now we've got psychological health and coaching and resilience training and, more and more and more of this. In fact, it's a $60 billion industry just in the corporate side, to say nothing of the consumer side. So, being the inquisitive type of analyst I am, I said, to the research people, why don't we take a look at this? Because my gut tells me that the employee well-being solutions alone are not going to solve the problem. We've got to deal with management. We've got to deal with leadership, job design, performance management, diversity. All these things affect your feeling of health at work. So we did this big project, and we surveyed 800 or 900 companies. We asked them to evaluate their practices in a whole bunch of areas. We had almost 90 or 100 practices. And we actually found out, as I expected, that there are some companies, about 15%, that are thinking about this as a holistic strategy for health, the health of individuals, the health of teams. They look at it as a leadership discipline. They look at it in the way they manage people and the way they manage projects, the expectations that are set for growth and promotion. In other words, you don't have to work 90 hours a week to get promoted. In some companies, that's considered to be a badge of honor. In some companies, no. So those companies at the fourth level were extremely high-performing companies. These were companies that had 4 or 5, 6 times higher financial performance over a long period of time. They have great employment brands. They're very innovative, and people love to work there. And one of the things that I, believe for years I've found this is that these aren't companies that just happen to be really, really fast-growing companies. They tend to be companies that have been around a long time, and they've lived through the Amazon experience. They've lived through the turnarounds, and they've realized that, it affects our shareholders, it affects our customers, it affects our stakeholders if we're not taking good care of people. So that the health and well-being of our employees is core to our business. One example of one of those companies is a company called Cummins Engine in Columbus, Indiana. This is a company that makes diesel engines. Now they're making all sorts of electric things, motors and stuff. And they're very successful, huge company. And I went to visit them in Columbus, and it's one of the happiest companies I've ever met. They happen to have, medical centers in every major facility where they do business, where you can go to the medical center and get, drugs or diagnostics or whatever you need. And I asked them, why'd you do that? They said, well, because our employees need it. We don't really want them leaving the company to go to the doctor and wasting a lot of time. And the ROI to us is very, very high. And it helps us, understand what the issues are that our employees are dealing with. And, that company, if you look at their numbers over the years, has been a high-performing company for many, many decades and takes really good care of their people. They're also, by the way, a leader in diversity and inclusion. They're a leader in promoting women into leadership, all sorts of other things. So I wanted to frame this in a way that the well-being buyer would come to the realization that this is bigger than just adding a bunch of benefits to the benefits program. And that's really what the research is all about.
As we try to take a more holistic approach to the health of our people, the members of our team, of course, there's the emotional and psychological health of our people. There's the physical health, of course. There's all these different components that we need to think about. And as you're conducting this research and reaching out to these 900 or so companies, what were some of the major findings that really stuck out to you that might inform the trajectory, of the way things go over the next couple of years?
Yeah, I think there's sort of a break point. So at the bottom levels of this, companies do tend to buy a lot of tools, and they have a lot of benefits, and they have financial well-being, and they have sleep and behavioral health and all that stuff. And at the core of this, by the way, is employee safety. Level 1 is safety. do we have a safe workplace? And so that goes without saying. And if you're an oil company or a manufacturing company, that's kind of sacrosanct. But then you reach this point where you have all this stuff and the employees don't use it. And you have this, like I talked to the CHRO of a large healthcare provider the other day, and she said, we have every possible well-being benefit we could ask for. We have nap rooms, we have all sorts of great things. But the employees keep saying to me, I don't think you really care about me. I've been working 60 hours a week. I've got patients coming in, arguing with me about their masks. It's my work that's making my life difficult, not these benefits. And so, once you reach that point and you realize that the problem is bigger than the benefits and the well-being programs, you look at job design, you look at goals, you look at management behaviors, you look at facilities and offices and logistical things that are getting in people's ways. And those fall into the category more of employee experience issues.
I'm excited to announce the publication of my new book from HCI Press, Bluer Than Indigo Leadership, The Journey of Becoming a Truly Remarkable Leader. Early in my adult life, I learned about an Asian proverb that translates as bluer than indigo. If you think about the color indigo, it is a brilliant, deep, and vibrant blue, what some would call the bluest of blues. To have something that is bluer than indigo is rare and truly remarkable. Contrary to popular myth, there is no one-size-fits-all or cookie-cutter approach to effective leadership. There's no silver bullet, no secret sauce, no go-to model that will solve all of our problems. The truth is, great leaders have all had their unique strengths and flaws, and have all had to discover and then pave their own distinctive path in their life's journey to fulfill their leadership potential. Bluer Than Indigo Leadership will help you discover your own path and explore those ordinary, everyday actions that will help you respond to an uncertain future and produce extraordinary results for individuals, teams, and organizations.
And at that point, this problem isn't located in the compensation and benefits department anymore. Now it's something the CHRO is talking about, the CEO is talking about, the management team is discussing. We're not sending emails on Friday afternoons or late over the weekend anymore and expecting people to come in on Sundays. I remember when I was at Deloitte, this is a funny story. Deloitte's a very high-performing company. People worked very hard. My first couple of years there was a very high turnover rate, and there was a bunch of projects to try to figure out why that was. So there was a well-being group that started up, and they started throwing out all these wonderful programs, but the retention rate really didn't change. And eventually somebody did a little study and found out the reason people were burned out was because they were leaving their homes on Sunday morning, getting on a plane, going to a client, getting there Sunday night, staying at the client Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, flying home Thursday night, going to the office Friday, having an all-hands meeting on Friday, and then going home Friday night. And all they had for their families was Friday night, Saturday, and Sunday morning. And most of the people at Deloitte are in their 20s or 30s. They have young families. A lot of them are single. They were getting burned out. And, so the answer wasn't to sort of change the whole company. The answer was to create a flexible consulting model. So while I was there, Deloitte came up with a much more flexible operating model for consulting. And by the way, the customers were very happy. The customers said, we didn't want you guys here all week anyway. I don't know, we weren't even sure why you guys were always around. So that is an example of, the type of thing that UPS does or pharmaceutical companies do to try to make the work itself healthy and the management experience around it. And it doesn't have to mean that less work gets done. It doesn't mean that people are going to goof off all day and sit around in the coffee shop and just hang out. It just means we're going to be better designers of the work, and we're going to think about the human issues from top to bottom. And I think the well-being industry is a bit of a fad. I mean, nothing against all these programs, but nobody can consume all this stuff. And even though people, you have this fancy app that wakes you up in the middle of the morning, every morning asks you how much sleep you got, that's nice. But why were you up the night before? Because your boss was breathing down your neck. I don't think the app knows that. So the software is getting better. Like Microsoft has some really nice tools that automatically create focus time on your calendar. There's a new technologies that do nudging that encourage you to slow down if you're doing work that appears to be going too fast. There's different technologies that are going to make this better. But right now, I think we have to just get out of this box of throwing well-being programs at employees and really thinking about what's going to make people productive and healthy at work.
Yeah, and that's certainly been my experience in different organizations I've been a part of. There's always this long cafeteria list of items, all these different benefits that are provided, most of which are never really utilized by most employees. Right. But the company can say, look at everything we're doing and we do care about you. The reality, like you said, is that most people aren't using them. Most people don't really see them as important or relevant. And so what's really driving their overall health and their experience within that organization is the job design. It is right. the organizational culture. It's their interactions with coworkers and with their boss. Right. Those are the things that are going to matter the most. And so focusing on job design, like you said, I think is just so important. And if nothing else, this pandemic has demonstrated that a lot of kind of our old-fashioned notions and traditions around job design and the way work functioned in the office wasn't particularly effective or efficient or necessary, frankly. And so now we have a chance to really take a step back and to look seriously at this and figure out what's meaningful, what's important, what needs to continue. I suppose that there are times when we need everyone pitching in, coming in on the weekend, putting in long hours because we have, some looming deadline we have to be able to get it taken care of. But it's one thing to have that once every blue moon. It's another thing to have that as the normal expectation. And it does just wear on people. And ultimately, it shouldn't be a surprise to anybody if you have high turnover, if people aren't happy, if people aren't engaged. And just because they're sitting in the office for 60, 80, 90 hours a week doesn't mean they're productive for 60, 80, or 90 hours a week. Yeah. And in fact, there's just so much research showing how little of that time is actually productive time. So why don't we redesign the work in such a way that people can optimize their efforts and get things done, have good outcomes for the company, while still maintaining some semblance of work-life integration and balance that allows them to live a complete life. Mm-hmm. When that happens, people are going to be happy. They're going to be fulfilled. They're going to give more and better to the organization.
No, I mean, I couldn't agree more. I think one of the things the pandemic did that was a positive is it gave us the freedom to do that, to allow people to work at home, to be more flexible, to be more forgiving, to say, okay, listen, if you can't come to the meeting, no big deal. We catch up later. I understand you have such and such going on at home. I mean, those are small things that make a huge difference. When people feel that the organization and their leaders care, they're willing to pitch in and put extra time in when it's needed. And the other thing is making work itself meaningful. I firmly believe, my own experience, my own kids, my own clients, 99% of the world goes to work because they want to do good work. They want to do something meaningful. Yeah, they want to get paid too, but if the work itself is not meaningful or interesting, it's never going to be great. So that's part of the job too, is making sure that the work as designed is valuable for the employee, not just the customer or the producer or the consumer. And great companies do that all the time. There's millions of ways to do that.
And it can happen in any type of organization. So, right. A lot of times we think of the Googles of the world, but like you were saying earlier, the earlier example, largely manufacturing-based company, they're doing it too. And there's so many
UPS,
examples like
you
that.
know, I've talked to AMC theaters. I mean, there's all sorts of what we call essential work. Now, I think healthcare is one that's the toughest, but most people who work in healthcare really want to help other people. So, you know, there's lots of extra effort going on in that industry right now to give people even more flexibility to accommodate their workload. But yeah, it's a good lesson regardless of the industry.
Yeah, and actually bringing up healthcare, I think that's a really important one. You know, frontline workers during the pandemic have been as burned out as anyone, probably more than anyone, and they've been dealing with all sorts of challenges over the past 18 plus months. But even pre-pandemic, it's a tough field. And if you're in nursing, for example, nurses have had high levels of burnout and turnover for a long, long time. And it's just been ramped up a bit during the pandemic with the burnout. And in fact, you know, I do a good amount of research in employee engagement and satisfaction. And it's funny when you look at academic literature in those areas, a disproportionate amount of it comes out of nursing and healthcare administration. And so you know that there's a problem there that they're trying to figure out. And certainly these new technologies will help as we try to figure it out. But ultimately it comes back to, I mean, even if you don't have a fancy technology to help you, it comes back to how I interact with my people as a leader. It comes back to the culture that I establish. It comes back to whether or not I'm emailing people all hours of the night and over the weekend. Am I taking my vacation time? Am I encouraging other people to take theirs? Am I honoring, you know, people's lives outside of work? Or am I expecting them to drop everything anytime I have any sort of question or need, you know, feel like I need something? You know, I'm in a situation right at the moment. I am recording in a different place than I normally do with different equipment because yesterday my two youngest sons tested positive for COVID. We've been so careful for the past 18 months.
Oh, what a drag.
It is a drag, right? Like we've been so careful for so long and they're just not old enough to get vaccinated yet. And, you know, but it happened, it caught up to them. They got COVID and so they're back home and just trying to juggle taking care of the boys and helping them with their homeschool and everything. And fortunately, I have a flexible job that allows me to do that with minimal disruption. And I'm grateful for it. I'm tremendously grateful for it. And I can only imagine if I was in a different type of occupation where ultimately I didn't have that level of flexibility. And so we just, there are some constraints around how we design work, depending on the industry, depending on the type of job. But some of those constraints are artificial. Some of them are just tradition, and we can disrupt that and ultimately rethink it. And if we do that, it's going to only be to the benefit of the company, to the people within the company. And ultimately, I think that's what everyone wants, right?
With all of that and everything we've been talking about, the other thing that really matters is just listening to people, just being a leader, a supervisor, a peer who cares about the person next to you. That goes a long way. Sometimes you can't solve the problem. Sometimes the work just has to get done. But if you feel like the people around you care and they're willing to do what they can to help you, that goes a huge way of making you feel better about your work. So, you know, I appreciate you sharing that story because that's exactly, you know, a good example of what happens to everybody.
Yeah, we all have stuff come up and things we have to navigate. Well, Josh, it has just been a real pleasure to touch base with you again, to hear about this upcoming report. Tell us a little bit more about where people can find more about that report. Tell us a little bit more about the Josh Bersin Academy, and then give us a final word on the topic for today.
Okay, well, if you go to joshbersin.com, it's all there. The report will be on the front page. It's called The Healthy Organization. You can just download it. Our academy is the world's best, largest, single only, maybe, professional development academy for all of HR. It's for HR professionals and HR organizations. We have spent a lot of time the last 3 years building a capability model around it so you can assess your capabilities and benchmark yourself against lots of other people as well as other organizations. And we would love to, to help any of you out there listening on any of these topics. And I would just say that, you know, I think coming out of 2021, we're all a little bit tired of this. It's not over yet. But if we take care of ourselves and our organizations, things will be fine. And a year from now, we'll be in a whole new world, I hope. So thank you, Jonathan.
Thank you. I hope so too. Again, it's always a pleasure. I encourage listeners to reach out, get connected, check out the new report, check out the Josh Bersin Academy, and all the great materials that are coming out of your team's work. And as always, I hope everyone can stay healthy and safe, that you can find meaning and purpose at work each and every day. And I hope you all have a great week. The alchemy of truly remarkable leadership. Ordinary, everyday actions that produce extraordinary results. Consider how the nature of work has shifted over the past 50 years. With increased globalization, rapid technological advancement, and the shift in economic composition, the average job of today looks very different than the average job of 50 years ago. What will the jobs and organizations of tomorrow look like? Moreover, what does this all mean for organizational leaders? What are the core competencies and capabilities of organizations and their leadership that are prepared for continued disruption and geopolitical and socioeconomic shifts? Regardless of what the future holds, increasingly, leaders need to be socially minded, data-driven, decisive, champions of talent, and disruptors of the traditional notions of leadership, teams, organizations, and work. The alchemy of truly remarkable leadership will help you to explore your own leadership competencies and capabilities and consider ways to apply and implement them into your workplace and personal life. Check out Human Capital Innovations magazine, Human Capital Leadership. Human Capital Leadership is a free, interactive e-magazine with the mission to help individuals, leaders, and organizations find innovative approaches to maximize their human capital potential. We publish issues quarterly in August, November, February, and May. Take a look at the latest issue and let us know what you think. Thanks again for joining us for this episode of the Human Capital Innovations Podcast. I hope you stay healthy and safe and that you have a great week. Check out our new weekly LinkedIn newsletter, Alchemizing Human Capital, exploring industry trends via original research and interviews with executives and thought leaders from across the globe. We look forward to having you join us.